Hello, this is Michael Eure, and I'd like to invite you to the Michael Eure Show, featuring student hosts and very special guests talking about a variety of interesting topics. You can find us on the Eagle Stream YouTube channel.
Well, we're live. So, Obelia, we've had some technical difficulties, even though we tried to avoid them. So we're going to start from the beginning. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you are we're going to get to what you do at the museum, but before we do that, talk about your growing up in Goldsboro, North Carolina.
Yeah, I grew up in Goldsboro, North Carolina, graduated from Goldsboro High School. I consider myself to be sort of a small town rural girl that grew up in a local county. And I share with you some of the things that I did was I'll never forget my years of working at the pickle plant. I'll never forget my years of going into tobacco fields. I eventually got a job working for the state, sort of out of Obelia Cherry. But the only reason I tell you those things is because that helped me to become who it is that I am today. So I'm saying that, and then I cleaned houses. My mom did it, and she kind of passed it on to me, and I helped to do that with women that she knew. So there's a lot of things that I did growing up in Goldsboro. I kind of look at it as my learning experience. And so there, and I'll go into the next phase when you want me to.
Right. So now what I want you to talk about is your experiences at Wayne Community College and how it prepared you for North Carolina A&T and NC State, perhaps.
Yeah, Wayne Community, I consider Wayne Community to be my base. I love Wayne Community, and right now I love Wake Tech because I am a product of that. And I believe, and I love telling that experience, that Wayne Community really gives me the backbone because it really is sort of like with the root of where I started, where my house is being built. I can put it like that. So I began Wayne Community, and they began to connect me and help me begin to believe in myself as I should. How did they do that? Well, they gave me tutoring classes and counseling classes and classes to help me gain strength and momentum to be prepared to become a professional in life. So I was in their college transfer classes. I took that, and I enjoyed it while I was there. I went there a couple of years. And as I say, they're kind of my backbone from the very beginning.
Right. And that kind of connects to our ILC, Individualized Learning Center, where they do the tutoring. And I know they do a great job. Now, when you went to A&T and you majored in art, how did you decide you wanted to major in art? Was that something you discovered while you were at Wayne?
I have an older sister and older sisters. And some of you viewing may know one of my sisters had passed, but I'm from a big family, and I should have said that in the beginning. There was 7 of us, and I'm one of the younger 3. So how did I start? My sister would see me drawing and would see me copying texts. I would say that, and my mom would see me as well. So I would do these little collages where I copied text, and I would also do just drawings of people, of cartoons, of anything that I could. And believe it or not, I was a very quiet young lady. And so I really did not even speak hardly. Had I been in your presence, I would have been there with the drawing pad. I would have been there with finding some words to write. And I'm pretty much sure I would have been there with a pencil. And so my mom and my sister decided, since she sort of did some peddling stockings and odd things on the street, she said, I don't want you to be an artists because they're not going to make any money. I see them on the street all the time. And my oldest sister, who's about 20 years older, had left and gone off to college. And she was like, Mom, there's another area she can go into. And my mom went, well, she's not going to be an artist because they're not making any money. They're just all hanging on the street trying to sell a painting. So I became my mom actually was instrumental in talking me into going into art education. Mm-hmm. And my sister pushed for, so to speak, graphic design. She didn't know that's what that was. And my mom said, at least if you go into art education, if you want to be an artist, you can kind of do a show, but you can also teach and make money. Mm-hmm. That's sort of my story with my family.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. And you were involved in other things at A&T. I'm going to get to NC State, but you were in the gospel choir and you got to meet some celebrities, I understand. Go ahead.
Yeah. Shirley Chisholm is one of the ones I remember meeting. But as soon as I get this, I came from that little rural town and I'm going up to the big city of Greensboro. I didn't know until about a year ago. My brother tells me that my mom was like, this is my last baby leaving home. I don't want her to go. So I must have stayed with my mom until I had parents like grandparents. So they were well in their 60s. So anyway, I went up to the big city of Greensboro after I left Wayne Community College. And by the way, I want to say Wayne Community helped me with my math. I was like, oh, wow, I could teach it now. So I completely, I tested out of it completely at A&T State University. That helped my confidence as well. And they had some great tutoring at Wayne Community. I just have to say that. So I went on and transferred to North Carolina A&T State University, and I joined the gospel choir while I was there. That was one of my other activities, and was in a lot of gospel groups. I'm gonna go back just a little bit. I was in gospel group at home. We always had our food clubs with my mom. So I did a lot of mission work before I even got up there in a lot of the mission clubs she was in. And then I'm from a singing family and a family that does instruments. So I left there and I went to A&T and I joined the gospel choir. And joining the gospel choir, I got to travel. And a lot of times we got to see politicians on campus. And Shirley Chisholm was one of the ones that I got to see. Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and thank you, because it's Women's History Month, so that's very, very good. And we will say A&T's founding was March the 9th, and it was also the International Day of the Woman. And now you are the international woman we got. So now we want you to go into your experiences at NC State. And through all of this, were you in any ways a minority woman student, female student, or was it just standard?
No, I just have to tell you, I believe Wayne Community played its role, in just giving me the grit that I needed to, and just the strength that I needed, and the character I needed to move on to A&T, because I took counseling there as well. And once I got to A&T, they really helped me to bond with African Americans and, truly have that experience. It's nothing like being an Aggie. You know that, and I know that. So, homecoming, all the experience of being on parade, all of it, games, everything. So I was in that gospel group with the gospel group. And leaving there, I went to NC State University, believe it or not, with at least 9, I want to think 10 African-American students. And once we got there, I believe that most of the students, I went to School of Design and, leaving NC A&T and going to NC State, and I'm going to get my master's there, was definitely kind of a culture shock. It was like, okay. And going into that School of Design program, which everybody has to fit into the School of Design program mode. They just have to. So experiencing that and going with students, 10 students with me, all 10 or 9, maybe I made the 10th, all of them quit and said, this isn't for me. I can't stay here. And believe it or not, about 5 of them went, you're going to be able to stay here. You're going to be the one to make it for us. They put the burden on me. But the integration of getting there and then just trying to live in that community or even talk to the students. I will never forget my School of Design experience, because what I found was as after the fear left me, and there was like, I am afraid, and I believe we all were afraid. After I worked through some of that, because I never went to counseling there at that school, but some of the students began to reach out to me as I was in courses with them, studio courses. And they began to reach out to me, and they began to show me how to do things. One of my best friends was a dude from the military, and he sat down with me. This is after you get past the point of, I'm shocked everybody in here is white and there's not one other Black graphic designer in this room with me. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And I had my experience there helped to shape me in every area that I am, because being at NC State, that's when my parents died as well, passed on as well. There was that fear, but I began to, when the students reached out to me, I reached out back. That was just a moment of, I believe you. I began to understand them. I believe they began to connect with me, and I really became friends with them. But it took a while to get used to that, because we're used to, I want to say, the Black experience. And then you're feeling as though many of the professors don't have your background, don't understand your background, and are not going to be sensitive to your needs. So I did have a not so good experience there when my parents passed. And I did have someone to say to me, well, why are things happening with you? And totally insensitive. And I began to, I'm glad I didn't let that help cause me to believe that all, white Americans were like that. And so I laugh now, because I have friends who would say, oh my God, I can't believe, yeah, of course she said that. And she's this way. And so I started laughing, because I began to understand that they were experiencing difficulties as I was. But I'm not going to go into the depth of what that made me feel when my parents, both, one died in August, the next one died in September. I had to drop out and get myself together. And I came back, and I remember some of the negative talk that was happening when I left. And then I also had folks to reach out to me. So it was, it was a great time, and it was a sad time. Every time I go to NC State, it was like my parents would want me to finish at NC State and get my degree in graphic design.
Okay, well, and that was a good story in a segue, because we're going to now see some of the work you do in graphic design at the museum. And I do appreciate your talking about A&T, because it is the largest HBCU in North Carolina, and Wake Tech is the largest community college. So we want to connect that way as well. In fact, A&T is the largest HBCU in the nation. But this is a picture of you and the African American Cultural Celebration design that you did. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was in my mind. I'm sure Emily Grant may be on here. It's like, oh, my last year with Emily Grant. I love my experience there, because we just began to come together. It's like, oh, there's this African American, there's this designer down there. And I just became a part of the African American Culture Celebration team. And that was really so wonderful. 2020 vision of 400-year legacy. I'm trying to remember. Okay, what was the? That was an Earl Imes kind of revelation of celebrating 400 years since 1619. It was a great design you did, though. Yeah, I felt like my idea there was if I could just sort of get the sash, because I wanted to really be really graphic. And this is the banner that goes outside. So my idea there was to get the patterns and get the graphic and actually, this is the first time I've really used the kente cloth actually in the words. And so, yeah, I wanted it to look embroidered, that sort of thing. And so this is really, I believe, my first time ever using that kente cloth pattern in there. And using, of course, the 2020 and that discussion with the African American cultural celebration, everything is discussed. So every word up here with that vision, and we're talking about that 400 legacy, is thematic and is discussed thoroughly with the AACC.
And for the audience, you don't know, Obelia is like the official graphic designer for the African American Cultural Celebration Planning Group, and for that whole celebration, which is big, and Wake Tech participates. And if we were in my office, you would see that I have this poster hanging up in there, as well as some others. So we're going to go on and look at some more of your great works, okay?
Yeah. Freedom Coming, A Promise Disrupted. That used to be traveling. And I believe in 2020, I want to believe when the Museum of History in 2020, that was the same year I believe this exhibit opened.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
And when you're standing there, does that mean that you have something to do with the graphic layout of this?
Yes, I had the opportunity, and I'll be using that a lot.
Okay.
I love saying opportunity to be the graphic designer, creative designer for this particular exhibit, and a discussion I was involved, and that's what one of the things I love about the Museum of History is you get that involvement with the teams, and you get the passion and the title topic discussion, like what is it going to be? And once you look at it, A Promise Disrupted, we're basically talking about, of course, disenfranchisement, but we're also going back to, forgive me, I'm trying to think of my word, reconstruction. And so the museum, as we dissected this, and I'm telling you a little bit on the inside of the team, how do you say to people, okay, we're not going to put reconstruction on there, but, what would be a word that would draw them in, and us with a subheading? So everything is discussed. And so, yeah, this goes back to the Reconstruction period, and the letters freedom, part of my job. The letters freedom is like a 3D. We actually go out to a group, get the letters cut, bring them back in, and install it that way. Right behind it is a mural. A Promise Disrupted was just printed on one surface. And the line at the top, line at the bottom, freedom, all of that was stuck onto, applied, if I can say that, to that surface. And we talked about the colors that we use, purple and blue.
Okay. And we're going to get to anybody that has any questions, please ask. But I know we have some comments, so we can kind of read through them before we go to the next slide. Laura Bethay from our Office of Career and Employment Resources, Creative Eye-Catching Design, Ms. Exum. Thank you, Laura. Wake Tech ILC, we was talking about tutoring. That's our people. Love that kente cloth design and the play on 2020. So Chris O'Riordan Aja from our Department of Engineering. That was a nice design, amazing. For most West Africans, every time we see kente, we get very excited. Thank you. He's from Ghana. And wow. The ILC tutoring again, what a cool design. The people in the background, the tree, such creativity and history captured here too.
Yeah. Right.
So do you have any responses for all those comments before we go to the next slide?
Oh, I'm so glad that they like the design. And this is one where I wished I could have shown the 3 phases of what this exhibit actually went through. On every exhibit, not only do I get to do the intro panel, but I also am the graphic designer for each, I would say, large poster graphic with text on it. And so we divided this into the 3 phases. And I know that first section included Harriet Beecher Stowe at the very beginning. And this exhibit by itself starts and it breaks up what Reconstruction really is. I believe it's not traveling anymore. And it had.
I know I was going to ask you a question about the museum. You can finish, but is it open now? And what are the hours?
Yeah, it traveled after we opened during 2020. It traveled to our satellite museums.
Okay.
And so when we say, is it open? It sort of like went from one museum to the next venue. A lot of times when we create the exhibits, they're always looking at how can we package this and how can this go to another satellite, or how can this go to another, say, a venue, the library, or whether that's a state school or whatever that venue is.
Because when we recently did the African American Cultural Celebration, it was virtual. So is this a virtual exhibit, or is the museum operating fully virtually, or is it a combination right now?
I think the museum is operating virtually. Okay. I'm amazed at what the museum has done during COVID.
Okay.
And I'm going to use the word celebrate. I celebrate with the museum for all of the work that they are doing virtual. Okay. And as everybody else, they had to began to use that during COVID. And, you know, that makes us bigger and that makes us grow even more.
Okay. Because when we get back to a sense of normalcy, I like the idea of doing things simultaneously, virtual and on site. And that's something that maybe had not been explored, not just at the museum, but at colleges and many other institutions. But I love you. So we're going to move to the next one because, you know, you got a lot of stuff to cover. So let's talk about Ernie Barnes a little bit.
Yeah, that picture of me with that hat on is me in my workspace, you all. I'm glad it looks a little neat, but yeah, that's where I live and work and play every day. And I'm thinking about it because if you were to have seen me today, I'm working on Answering the Call exhibition. So that's yet another brand and look that's coming up. That's going to open April 6th. You got to come and see it. Okay. So, but I love this look because one, my graphic designers gave me that hat because I'm a person that wear a lot of hats. Okay. And I do mean physical. I am a person that wear a lot of hats. So I love that picture because it's like, that's me, definitely in my workspace. The Ernie Barnes exhibit, oh my God, that must have been one of the most exciting exhibits I had worked on. I got excited for many reasons on that entry panel, which is where I am standing, that we decided to use the drum major. We decided to use him as our icon for the exhibit. And so on every, and I always like talking to the designers, on every bit of ephemeral that we used, he was on there. And I got joy. It is an opportunity to be able to actually execute this. And so I enjoyed it. And I want to talk a little bit about it at the top and at the bottom. Ernie Barnes loved wood. And so I knew whatever that entry title graphic was going to be, it was going to include that wood, because one of the things he liked was getting the wood. He used wood frames in his paintings. And many of you may have been able to make that exhibit. Don't let me start guessing on when it opened. So I put wood in this painting, and also, like I said, the drum major, I saw in some of his notes where he would come home and he would sketch this drum major in many depictions. Mm-hmm. And so this was one of the favorite images that he loved painting. So The other thing I have to say about exhibitions is it's powerful to just see an image twice as large as you are when you're in an exhibit. You want to make a big blast like when the person goes there. So I love it that people use it as a backdrop. And if you look down at the bottom, I put that subheading on plexiglass. I'm getting detailed, but these are component parts. I do small sketches and then have them to scale, draw those images, have it to scale, enlarge it once I get it to the printer. And then we have a firm to come in and just put that together.
And I do want to acknowledge that Ernie Barnes is actually from Durham and went to Hillside and North Carolina Central. So the drum majors was something he knew about, played professional football, and they called him Big Rembrandt. And so the museum did host his exhibit, and I guess it was a birthday celebration of some sort, but it was excellent. And we even had the kids from South Africa come, and they loved it, from Cape Town. So I think we got some more for you.
Okay.
All right, the Suffragettes. Let's talk about them a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm talking about this purely from these are exhibitions that I've worked on, and images that we have put together. If I did not say it, we meet with teams on any and all of these exhibits, and each team is different. So I love sharing this one because this is one of these pictures that I felt like I did 50 sketches, but I really didn't. So one of the things we were enjoying when we talk about you have to start a thing, and is that that comes from, I should remember her name, but that's what we got the name from, a suffragette, a suffrage person. We got that name from there. And one of the things.
Go ahead. And we were going to talk not about Susan B. Anthony, but Ida B. Wells a little bit, but let's skip that because I know that's a lot for you to do as a graphic designer.
It's a lot. But let me just talk about.
But we do have a question for you as soon as you finish with this.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And I just want to say this is one of the most interesting, I want to say, entry title panels that I've done, because there were 4 intricate parts with this. So this running banner votes for women, which is actually taken specifically from the banner. Votes for women. That's one banner, one 3D piece that's applied, and then the actual banner in the back to show suffragettes, and then the women from Greensboro. That's another piece applied. And then actually to show the protest at the bottom, because sort of what we were all talking about is the different phases of women and the times that they had protested throughout history. And so that we wanted it to look historical, but also go from one date, bringing it up to what does 2020 look like? And that's what this exhibit sort of entails. This is Gertrude Will. She's actually from Goldsboro, North Carolina. And she's one of the famous suffragettes, which is right here on the banner. And you all, I just want to say I had fun working with the team with putting fringes on it, because the whole idea was to create a banner. This was the look and the feel of that time and that period. And that's one of the reasons we have that up there. That is what it was all about, to make it look like fabric. And then to have your collage at the bottom, and your votes for women, which is a banner that they kept on everything 1800s.
And that exhibit is up now, right?
It is up now. And I wrote a note down because I wrote that note knowing I'd have to remember a lot of things. It said opening through August 8th. So it's open through August 8th. You can go and see it. There's a lot of discussion there about suffragettes, those who were for suffragettes, a lot of discussion, those who were against. There's great audio that they have in there that is just amazing to me. It makes the exhibit come to life. And then it's a full array of North Carolina and what was North Carolina's whole stance on what the national group was doing. And so it's sort of like this is the North Carolina version connected to, okay, what was the national group doing? And from what I'm understanding, North Carolina was not out there actually going out and holding protest signs up nationally. But North Carolina was more in their little office spaces, writing letters and that sort of thing, regardless of what the national group of women were doing. And some of them were connected.
All right, let's ask the question for you. This is from Chris again. Miss Obelia, thanks for sharing. Can you please discuss some of the software you use and what students pursuing graphic design should focus on? Sorry, I'm joining late, so if you already discussed, but she didn't answer that before. What should graphic design students focus on? That's the basic.
Yes, and that's funny you would ask that question. That is the question. I basically work with Adobe Illustrator, and so it's so funny because the Votes for Women, I actually laid out in that program. I worked on Photoshop with the collages that you see in the back. So in Photoshop, with the banner and the Suffragettes women, I worked in Photoshop with that program as well. And I mainly use, believe it or not, InDesign. And I use InDesign a lot because we have a lot of text panels. We don't just have one in our exhibitions. It's multiple. And so because we have heavy text with image, InDesign for us at the Museum of History is the program. When I say multiples, we may have an exhibit. It could be 40 panels. It could be 80 panels. And then it could also be consistent in formats and sizes. So most of the time, because we are text heavy, I'd love to grab my images from Photoshop or touch them up in Photoshop, bring them into InDesign. This was done with a combination of programs, Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop and InDesign, because I kind of worked on my scale. Illustrator takes a lot of memory. So I kind of worked on a small scale in InDesign to begin this project. And then I went into Illustrator and Photoshop for other portions of this. But because I teach, I have taught as well. I typically tell my students to stay familiar with InDesign, not to do all of their what I call text and content when you're writing body copy. A lot of times, realistically, and you're working with an institution, that body copy is never going to be 3 or 4 lines. It's great to stay realistic with laying that out in InDesign. You might have 10 panels and then taking your images out of Photoshop, bringing them into InDesign to lay out, and out of Illustrator into InDesign to lay out. You could obviously lay this out in many of the programs, but that is how I'm working in the programs. And the cutout, I just went into Photoshop, cut that out, laid it on my design in InDesign. And I love InDesign because I can just make small proportion and it doesn't take up as much memory as Adobe Illustrator does.
Okay, and we have at least another question and another comment, and I'm going to get you to put your information up in a little bit. Wake Tech ILC tutoring, the vision and planning that goes into these designs is amazingly intricate. Thank you for sharing these details. Laura Bethea again, what advice and or resources do you offer aspiring graphic designers seeking experience and employment opportunities in the field? And I think she's talking about the Museum of History. Do you have internships or any kind of programs for graphic design? People that are interested. Go ahead.
Yeah. And let me answer the first, and then you let me know if I've completely answered them. Just in terms of internships, the Museum of History offers that somewhere around March or so. They'll go in and fill out a form and ask for it. It goes to the Department of Cultural Resources. So it's just not us at the museum. It goes to the bigger hub. And we ask them, and I would like for people to look online for that information as well. But seems like I see the internships coming over somewhere around February. So they may have a call and say, hey, do you all need an internist? If so, let's fill out this form. And we have a coordinator there at the Museum of History in Education. So do go to our site, North Carolina Museum of History.org, and look at that more.
And can we interrupt just to have Sarah, can you put her contact information? If they can't remember, at least they can contact you directly. Okay. I know that's not your job, Obelia. I'm just asking. If our students are interested, can they contact you and you get them?
Oh, feel free to contact me. Yeah, feel free. I have shadowed students, and here's an interesting thing here. Because production is just so heavy, sometimes I barely have enough time to let up. It's like, oh my God, have enough time to breathe. And I was sharing with Michael that I'm working on Answering the Call, which is going to open April 6th. And right now is a heavy production period for me as well. But like I said, doing those entry panels and graphics panels throughout the exhibit, I am excited at the age where I am, excited about being a graphic designer and having that creative director hat on. Typefaces, trust me, the kinds of typefaces you use means everything. Sometimes you have to have that historical look. I can go into this because I forgot I have been a professor as well.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about, because I know you taught at St. Augustine's University and North Carolina Central University.
Yes, right? I was a visual communication studio over at NC State. I must have taught there before I had my son. He's 24 now. So just imagine before those years, I was at NC State teaching visual communication seminar and studio. So I was actually teaching classes, and I want the students to know that my students would ask me in studio, did I actually work in graphic design, or was I a teacher teaching theory? And I would say, I'm glad you asked. That would help me to give them assignments to come to the North Carolina Museum of History so that they could see I was actually working there. So yes, I worked for North Carolina Central University for about 10 years. And at part-time, and also I've been on and off with St. Aug here and there.
But Central has a great art collection, don't they?
They do. It's really a great artist school, because Ernie Barnes went there as well. And he was constantly, when I was there, he would come on campus. It would be a weekend or so that he would come on campus. And they would show his work there at that museum as well. But yeah, they have a great art collection. I haven't been there in a while, but my connections there are still, pretty much live, because I know the chair there, the chair of the department there. So he and I still dialogue. He and I still talk about students. And over the years, you all, I just want you to know, maybe not in the last 2 years or so, but over the years, we've hired and worked with students from the community college. We've hired and worked with students from North Carolina Central. I'm not sure if I got one from St. Aug, but local colleges. And sometimes students have come in to shadow, even from high school. So there have been many students that have worked with me there at the North Carolina Museum of History.
Well, I'm going to have to ask you to prepare yourself to get invited to Wake Tech when we get back on site. And then hopefully maybe we can take some students to the Museum of History and you can give them a tour of the things you do. And
this trust me, it's quite complicated. It's quite complex. I love to tell the new people who are coming into the museum that I still love and appreciate what I do. I was thinking when I became a graphic designer way back, was it 30 years ago? Well, I was thinking when I became a graphic designer, I don't know if I will always be one, but I'm glad to say on this program, I have enjoyed being one. I've enjoyed being a creative person there, working with museum staff. And I failed to mention, I actually have 2 other graphic designers that work alongside with me. And we have kind of a studio environment. We've got a little bit of a different environment than just your regular office rooms. And so we share with each other, from one graphic designer to the other, resources, any essential information. We've got 2 plotters there at the Museum of History, so we output as well. These are technical things, but things that I know that the students would enjoy hearing.
And for students that don't major in graphic design, there's lots and lots of opportunities at institutions like the museum. But we do have another question and comment for you.
Okay.
All right. Tiana Stewart Ross, how you doing? Sign me up, she says. Okay. And Wake Tech ILC, is the print behind you one of your original creations? And we talked about that earlier. It just illustrates your taste, right?
It illustrates my taste. I have to admit, I have a little bit of bamboo in my house, a little bit of Asian art going on. So in this particular room that I'm in, I have that in here. My connection, I was thinking to myself, and all of my images are downstairs in my family room and in my office studio. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, I would love for them to have seen just some of the visual branding I did when I was at NC State, because I have those images downstairs. I've also have images where I worked before I came to the Museum of History contracted out to the city of Raleigh, where I did festivals there as well. And I did art shows there as well. So I should have known when I started out doing festivals for the city of Raleigh, I would end up doing it for the state of North Carolina. This room is the only room that I actually have more of, I want to call it sort of an Asian background. The rest of my rooms, I'd love to do another interview and sit in the room that has all of my paintings and that has much of my work, artwork, design, posters, ephemeral exhibits, items. I have all of that in my other rooms.
Well, we're going to get you back, as you know. And see, I got some African art in the background.
Oh, you do? You do?
A little bit, yeah. But I really love the work you do, and I want you to think about coming back. And as I say, virtually and
if you don't mind. If you don't mind, if I could give a shout out as well.
Sure.
I'm also with Justice Theater Project. And as you know, I was on Black Nativity. It's one of the other creative things that I've done as well. I think creativity has my name on it. So I was in Black Nativity, and I'm looking here because I wrote it down, and I wanted to give a shout out about Black Nativity, not Black Nativity. I was in Black Nativity in 2019, actually. And I applied for a role. And let's see.
And I also want to do the little shout out, if you don't mind, to the Museum of History. It's a wonderful, wonderful board that we serve on. Allison, Bully, and Nancy, and Michelle, and Earl. Just a great group of people to work with. And of course, Obelia Exum.
Yes, I was going to get to ncmuseum.org. That's where they have to go to get that information. Justice Theater Project, the reason that is a part of my life as well, the theater part. They've got, and I wanted to mention that The River Speaks of Thirst, and it's going on now. I'm just like, and you've got the poet laureate, Jackie Sheldon Green. Who better could you have? Do go to the justicetheater.org, justicetheaterproject.org, and look at that. They're having a party on Friday for people who want to go on and see this moving experience that we have there. And
where's the party at?
And I we're online now with that.
Okay, you have it online. Okay.
Yes, it's online, and it's March 14, and tickets are on sale, so go there and check it out. I'm going to be there as well, checking it out on that time as part of that. So that's one of the groups that I'm also with, is Justice Theater Project. Enjoyed Black Nativity as well. That was part me acting and me singing. Went for a singing role, and I actually got a singing role and a speaking role. So I sang in that. So there are a lot of things that I do that I was sharing with you previously.
And that's why you have to come back. But we have another question before you leave.
Oh, yeah.
Laura Bethea, what's your next venture in graphic arts? That's a good question.
Now, that is like the greatest question. So, I ask my viewers, how do I take all of what I've learned and all of where I've been, and especially with the Museum of History, also teaching products that I have, how do I share that with younger people and tell them what my experience has been since I was a student and just a young kid going into the field. I became a graphic designer. It must have been about 25. Look at me now. So the question is, how do I market this product? How do I show from this point on, okay, here's where I'm going next?
Have you thought about doing any summer camps or workshops or anything like that?
That is something I would certainly entertain if I can. I can certainly connect with that. I know there are a lot of young students out there that want to know, that really want information on how do you put this together? How did you do this at the museum? That sort of thing. So I have thought about a lot of things, and also including writing a book. I've already written a book, but now with the information that I have as I've been at the Museum of History, there's a lot, and not only the Museum of History, Justice Theater, even at the universities, that's a lot of information to hold. And so I'm putting in my mind creative ideas and asking that same question of how do I share this information to you, the public? And you've given me the opportunity to begin that.
And we're going to leave in a minute. We're going to get your information again. But do you feel most graphic designers could do illustrations for books, since you brought that up? Did you see the book that I had? I would love to. Oh, Circa?
No, this is Blossoming Hope. This book.
No, I didn't. Oh, do we have a picture of that, Sarah? Do we?
Yeah, Blossoming Hope.
If we do, we put it up real quick. But I love your imagery. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I wanted to show the students.
There it goes. There it goes.
Yeah, Blossoming Hope. I wanted to show them that because aside from all the projects I work with at the museum, I do want to say I do other projects on the side, and I grabbed this one just because I just felt like this came out so wonderful. But Dr. Tanya Armstrong was just at our African American Culture Celebration on mental health. And she, I worked with her on designing this book. And so I said that to you because it looks like, oh, did an illustrator work on this?
Okay.
So a graphic designer is smart enough to know how to get bits and parts and pieces, do a little bit of the sketch, and actually put a collage together that looks like a tight sketch. I don't always think an illustrator is necessarily a graphic designer, and a graphic designer is necessarily an illustrator.
But you are.
So I did put that together, and I loved working on this book right here, but there are really more books that I've worked on. There are more projects I've worked on than what you've seen at the museum. And also the women's suffrage project there are articles that I've written in there as well. So that's part of my experience in Circa as well with interviewing people. There are a lot of things that I really do that I didn't share all of it. Can an illustrator be a graphic designer? I think from the school that I came from, we can focus on, sometimes the illustrators are really good from what I've noticed. And I tell my students that if I see that they have a fanatic, they can kind of draw, or they're people who draw, let's put it like that. I usually, and they're really good illustrators, sometimes I tell them to go to head for more illustration, and you can just learn some basic graphic design traits because you need to use your strength. And so if you're not an illustrator and you have a student or a friend, that's when you and that student can get together and work together on your book, your poster, your project, or your team of people. And then we're in a society now where even as a student, your team of people can get together and say, hey, we worked on this book cover, or we worked with this person to create this book flyer, poster, whatever that person's bio is. I believe that a good graphic designer can do a little bit of all of it, but we work a lot with text, body text, typefaces. You've got to find the right one for your style and for your look. And so a great illustrator, if you choose to go into that field, then certainly I would say put your portfolio out there, show your illustrations, and have some minimal graphic design with that. I always say your gift will make room for you. And Michael knows I say that. That gift of illustrating will make room for you. And the graphic designer, if you're a graphic designer that can actually show, draw, and have some illustrative skills, certainly by all means, use those skills with your graphic design. Whatever you do, make impact, make it a very strong visual. Make it have character and show that you really, your work is quality and professional product.
And thank you very much. One last time, Sarah, if you could, and Sarah's in the background doing everything, we appreciate it. If you could put Obelia's contact information, and Obelia, if you don't mind reading it, because we do have an audience that can't see it. There's one audience that is looking at it live stream, and then we have some podcasts that they're only going to hear it. So if you don't mind reading it, if they want to get in touch with you.
Okay, that's Obelia Exum, obelia.exum at ncdcr.gov.
Thank you.
Please. Yes, please look at our site at the Museum of History. Civil Rights Online is on coming up. There are a lot of exhibits that are coming up that you've got to just come and share with us.
Do people need to make appointments to come to the museum at this point? Do we need to make appointments to come into the museum, or is it open at all right now?
Yeah, the museum is open actually every day except Monday. So we've got Saturday and Sunday, our regular hours. We are experiencing, we are in COVID. And so we're set up as someone.
Hello. I hope she didn't go, but we have a couple of comments, so we can put those up. Chris O'Riordan, our job. Thank you all. Great show. Thank you, Chris. Wait Tech ILC. I have so enjoyed listening to you. I hope you return so that we can see your designs from your other rooms and hear more about your work and projects. Thank you. Maybe we'll get together with student activities and maybe the graphic design department and have her come and do a show. And I guess we're through. And sometimes I think that technology will tell us that it's a wrap. So once again, thanks everyone for coming, and we'll see you on the fourth Thursday from 12 to 12:30 or so. Have a great weekend.